Hello, and welcome to the Divine Feminine Leaders podcast. My name is Celeste Hartwell, and as we're going through this, I'm refining my verbiage a little bit on what this podcast really is. And what came for me yesterday was the Divine Feminine Leaders podcast is a feminine view of entrepreneurship for women, by women. And I was like, boom, mic drop. It's so powerful, this podcast, what we're doing by interviewing powerhouse women, women who I adore, who I'm inspired by, who I feel led to showcase. It's just a whole interesting mix of who's coming up, and it's been a lot of fun. So today I am like beyond excited to introduce you to a woman who has really helped me in my spiritual life, and her name is Christine Agro. So she is a conscious living expert, spiritual teacher, and a clairvoyant. She helps people live life fully by bringing life's challenges into perspective, providing clarity, and offering tools and guidance to create real change. She's been called a secret weapon as she unlocks areas of your personal power you didn't know that you had and holds space for you to step into your full potential. She's been called the Perspective Oracle because of the unique and clear insight she brings to our everyday life experiences. Christine keeps answering the call to reach more people and follows the threads that come. Today, they have led her to write the #1 international best-selling book, Awaken and Grow, a practical guide for your spiritual journey. By the way, it's available on Amazon. She's created and launched the Awaken and Grow Flow personal development app with the intention of breaking down financial accessibility to personal development and new age spiritual work. She has appeared as a conscious living guest expert everywhere from Good Morning Connecticut to Good Day Chicago, and in print in HuffPost, Elite Daily, and Ask Men. So I want to welcome, so excited to have Christine here. As I mentioned a little bit before, I'm probably going to wax a little poetic on Christine because I was really in a sore place 2 years ago, and I often say my life was a shit show. And now, like, through working with her, I really did answer the call. I did not know how I was going to pay for it, but I did it anyway, and I was able to pay for it. And it was just, having her support was wildly game-changing in my life. So Christine, welcome. Thank you for being
Celeste.
here.
Thank you for having me here. And I feel so excited. It's so awesome. Like, the energy in the space here is just incredible. So thank you. I'm really honored to be here.
Thank you. I'm so happy to have you. So I want to hear a little bit about where you were in your life when you got the call that you were a spiritual teacher and spiritual leader, and how you moved into that. I know this story personally, but for anybody who hasn't heard it.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny how things happen, because a student just said, "Has anybody ever interviewed you on your story?" And nobody has. So it's funny. It's like, oh, but maybe soon.
Maybe now.
It's such a long winding story with such interesting moments in it. I can go back to age 7 when I first started having visions of things that were going to happen and not knowing what to do with them, and move all the way forward to present time. What I know about my journey is that there's always been a connection within me to spirit. So when I look at the things that happened in my life, I can see where spirit stepped in, or where spirit was there and said, nope, let's go this way. Nope, let's do this. How about if we do this instead? When I started going down a wrong path, spirit was there going like, oh, let's go back over this way. And it doesn't mean that I haven't had challenges in my life. I just find it interesting to look back and see that. So throughout my entire life, I have been a support for people. People have come to me looking for answers, looking for insight, looking for healing, looking for guidance. I know when I was doing development work, which I did for about 10 years, people would come to me who worked in the organizations, and I would spend so much time helping them with their problems that I had to work after hours to get my work done. And I mean, I ran the department, so it wasn't, I could do whatever, really kind of whatever I wanted as long as everything got done. But I thought it was really interesting, right? That this was, even when I was younger, my friends would call and my mom would say, as soon as the phone would ring, my mom would yell, "The doctor's in," right? Because she knew it was going to be me on the phone counseling my friends, and I never thought anything of it. It was just like the way things were for me. So it wasn't until I was 34 that I actually stepped into really owning everything that I have and figuring out how to use it, which I'm really glad that I did. I found a program in Colorado, and it was a 1-year program that really it established my reading space in a place of clarity and neutrality that has served me so well throughout my entire life, from then forward, in terms of knowing that validating myself was important, not getting in other people's business. And even all of that has been part of the journey to me stepping up in my visibility. If I take steps and I'm in ego, I get a nice little reset, right? I get a nice little like, whoa, right? And then I get to look at it and go, oh, okay, I see where I stepped into ego there. And then we move forward again, and then another opportunity comes up. And every time it is the opportunity to show up fully as spirit in alignment. And it's kind of magical. So I don't know, is that a good enough, like?
No, I think that's great. And I just want to back up a little bit. Like, when you talk about reading space, you're talking about the clairvoyant reading space, correct?
I am, yeah.
So do you want to talk about that a little bit more and your work around that and helping people with that?
Sure. In the beginning, it was the core of the work that I did. I was doing one-to-one readings with people, and that space was always see it, say it. So it wasn't me trying to come up with a solution for people. It was giving them insight into what was going on in their life, and then it was really for them to figure out what to do with it. That's the whole tenet of the work, is not to get into other people's business, because our life lessons are meant for us to learn, not for somebody else to learn them for you. So I was always very sort of, I think a lot of it's my Scorpio energy, right? It's like very, very like, I'm gonna, like, this is how I'm doing it, and I understand it. And so this is like, it was very clear to me. And I love to go to the depths of things and find the commonalities, which is what started happening in the reading space. So I would be working with a woman in India, and somebody in Japan, and somebody in the Midwest, and somebody in Canada. And I would see these common threads, and I was curious, because that's just how I am. I'm super curious about how all of this works. And so I would go into my own meditation space, and I would start looking at the energy of it. And I found, ways to pick it apart and to gather information to understand what it was. And what's most fascinating about it all, so in 1999, when I started doing this, I got an edict from Spirit not to read anybody else's work. It was do your own work, do your own homework, find your own information. And anytime I tried to get involved with somebody else, it would go horribly awry, right? It was like that Spirit intervening and going like, yeah, no, we told you not to do this. So now I'm at this place where the work is kind of expanded, and it's morphed into a lot of different things, and I'm connected with a lot of different people because of the level that I'm working at. And somebody will say something, and I'll be like, oh, that's like this piece that I saw. And what it's really demonstrating is that it's all universal knowledge, and that it is truth, and it's out there. And that's one of the things that I love about that edict, is that it set me up over 20 years to gather all this information, and now to look at it and see it as true truth and universal knowledge, and see how it shows up in cultures and different perspectives and modalities. And I just find it fascinating.
I love it. It's, for anyone who doesn't know, like, this was new on me when I met you, that you're not reading Louise Hay and you're not reading Wayne Dyer, and you're, like any of the big self-help development, personal development type authors and creators and people who have been bringing in the spiritual knowledge. Like, and so I would be like, oh, Christine, you talk about mirror work in your book, Awaken and Grow. And, we can talk about that a little bit. Like, Christine grew up saying, looking in the mirror and telling herself that she loved herself. She felt called to do that. And I was like, oh, Louise Hay talked about that, and basically it was around the same time frame that work was released, that you were getting that as well.
It was, yeah. Which I again, I find fascinating. It's this, what I know that I have, or understand now that I have, is this sort of, conduit into the collective consciousness. And I'm not the only one who has it. Like, I'm not saying like, it's just me. But I'm one of the people who has it, and I'm bringing information in, which anchors it into the collective consciousness, and then allows all of us to access it. So, when I was 12, I grew up with my older brother telling me that I was stupid, fat, and ugly. And I don't hold ill will towards him. Like, I'm not saying this like, like I'm like upset about it. I understand. I see what he's working on or was working on. But of course it wasn't pleasant. And it was actually part of my journey to stand in my own truth and stand in my own power. And so when I was 12, I had this realization that if I didn't love myself, nobody would love myself. Where that came from, right? It came from spirit, because, that certainly wasn't the philosophy of the family. I think I think Phil Donahue was on at the time. Like, I mean, like Dr. Phil wasn't around, Oprah wasn't around. Like, I don't even know what was going on, like, in that whole realm of like talk shows and stuff. But this was not the information that was present in our family. And so I like to laugh. I laugh and I just say, like, this was the first tool that I created, right? I sat down and I was like, okay, well then how do I love myself? And it was like, well, I guess you just tell yourself that you love yourself. And so I started doing that in front of my mirror every morning, and boy, was it uncomfortable. And I did it every day until I could do it without feeling uncomfortable. And then I felt like, okay, well, I don't feel uncomfortable anymore. I must be okay. Like, I must have gotten it. And then years later, in, talking to you about the book and working with you on the edits, and you said that, I was like, oh, about Louise Hay, I was like, oh, how fascinating is that to me, that here I was, like, this 12-year-old, and she was probably in her 30s at the time, or late 20s, bringing that work in.
Right.
So really, really interesting to me how, just, from a neutral, like, almost like observer perspective of my own life.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I was like, oh, that's so wild, because I think a lot of women in the sphere have, like, read all the self-help things, right? And we absorb a lot of knowledge, but we don't necessarily then take it into our daily practice.
Yeah.
And that's where I think that your work is really powerful in helping people do that. So do you want to talk a little bit about how you help people do that?
Let's see. I don't know. Like, how do I talk about that? I do believe that there's a big difference. And I think I talk about this in the book. I can't remember exactly. When I write, oftentimes I'm channeling. So I don't necessarily, like, sometimes people say things back to me and I'm like, I said that.
That didn't come from me. That came through me.
Yeah, right. So the work, I think the best way to describe it is that it's really about helping people step into personal autonomy. That's a word that I've been using lately, which is, full ownership of the self and full recognition that I've always stood in this space of what I do is not unusual. It's not unique. We can all do it. And I've held that space for everybody that I work with, that this is something that we all have access to. And that's what I teach people, is how to access it, right? How to be fully present in your body, which is what it comes down to, right? It's not about reading. It's not about, manifestation. All those things come, but it's really about being fully present as spirit in your body. And then what happens when you are in that space? That's when the magic happens. And, it's not my latest thing with students, because I've been seeing this, they want the one and done. I'm like, this is not one and done work.
Right.
This is not one and done. You don't come into a class, learn the tool, and then you've got it and you're done. This is learn the tool, apply it, and live this way, right, and you will grow. It's an ongoing process because we don't ever stop growing. I had somebody ask me in a radio interview once if I was fully evolved, and I was like, what? like how I don't even know what that would look like. I don't even know what being fully evolved would. I mean, it's fascinating to me to think about it.
I feel like you wouldn't be in a body. You'd be complete with this experience.
I don't know. I mean, I think this whole purpose of this lifetime is about getting to the place where we can be spirit with a body, with spirit leading, right? So not falling into the ego trap or the mental body trap or the ego trap, right? Any of those things. Are you hearing the bing bing?
No.
Okay, good. All right. And so if we can get all of our cells, all of our energy bodies in alignment with spirit, then we get to have all of the power of spirit with the body as the vehicle, right? With all of the different aspects of ourselves as the vehicle to access the power of spirit. So that's and maybe that's what the fully evolved picture looks like this lifetime, right? It's not, I think in past lifetimes, and especially when we think about sitting cross-legged in meditation, the purpose of that so many years ago was because our purpose was to evolve through the spirit, through the physical body, and touch the spirit, right? To touch enlightenment. And so we sat in that figure 8 position because it let the energy rotate through our body and move us up and out, because the whole purpose was to try to reach up to touch enlightenment. So today we are enlightened. It's here. And now the purpose is to connect the whole thing so that we can be present in this form. So I just find our evolution so fascinating. What we do as spiritual beings, this whole journey. And it is very much like a video game. I was talking to my son, I've had this idea to create this video game for years, and it is about the spiritual journey. And so I was telling him about it, and he was like, so, he was asking me questions about, would it be this or would it be that? And we were going back and forth with it. And then, and he was like, oh, I really like this. This would be real. I can see it. It would be really a good game. It would be really cool. And then I looked at him and I said, so what if we're already in the game and I just got to the point in the game where I'm creating the game within the game? And he looked at me and he was like, stop it.
Because we are.
He's 15, by the way. So for everybody watching, it's not like he's like 30 years old.
I love that. And when you talk about bringing spirit into the body, I know because I've worked with you, but part of that is grounding into the ground as well. So do you want to give some like 2 tips and tricks as to like how people can really ground into their body?
Yeah, well, the whole point of grounding ourselves is to start the process of telling our body that it's safe for spirit to be present, right? So our physical beings, our energetic beings are full of everything. Well, I don't want to say are full of everything except for ourselves, because obviously there's parts of us there, but throughout our lives, we absorb and fill in all those empty spaces with stuff that isn't ours. And once we get to a place of awakening, that's when we start the process of unpeeling the layers and letting go of all the stuff that isn't ours. So the picture that I keep seeing lately is of a glass of water and dropping a stone into it, right? So where spirit's the stone, and as you drop the stone into the glass, all the stuff like whoosh, comes out. So it's a process, because there's a lot of lessons that we need to learn in that stuff that comes out. That's why it's not one and done. It's like each layer holds a piece of awareness that lets us move to the next level, which goes back to the video game, right? Like it's like each step unlocks a new reality, and you can't have that reality if you haven't done the step below it,
right?
Because we'd be back at like Atlantis, right, where we use the power incorrectly and destroyed everything, right? Or I think Roman time was kind of a similar thing, where there was a real connection, and ego and emotion and mental body just took it off in the wrong direction. So we keep trying to do this, in sections of time throughout history, where we keep trying to show up as fully as spirit. I think this is the closest, though. It feels pretty like there's a lot of people who are getting there. I know when I first started doing this work 20 years ago with people, it would take people like 6 months, a year to get to where they're getting in a day today. Wow. Like it's that quick that people are getting it. I don't spend half as much time in classes on certain things that I used to. So grounding, is really about, creating a welcoming environment for spirit to be present in the body. So I used to do it the way that I learned through the Interconnection Institute, which was like a renegade offshoot of the Berkeley Psychic Institute. So there's this lineage in the work. And they were grounding into the earth and releasing energy into the earth. And every New Year's, the beginning of the year, I check in with the earth to see what she's working on, because I fully see this micro macro dynamic of what we're working on, and then what's being worked on a larger level. And there's always these parallels and again, these universal things happening. So I checked in with the earth, and she showed me taking all of her power back. And this was 2012, I think, 2011, somewhere around there. So she showed, and I thought, oh, so we're going to be taking our power back. Like, we're moving into this place. And obviously we have been. Like, we can see how as individuals we're taking our power back, as collectives we're taking our power back. So I continued to do the meditation in the way that I had been taught, and it kept not sitting well with me. I was like, there's something off with this. And so I put it out in front of me, and I looked at it, because that's what I do. I look at everything. And I looked at the energy, and what I saw was that for the work that I was doing, and the people that would be and do work with me, that this process of dumping into the earth was not okay. It was one-sided and kind of unnecessary. So I switched up the grounding, where now we allow roots to grow from our feet down into the earth, and we simply root ourselves like a plant would or a tree would into the earth. And then we have some other tools that we use to do alignment and ways of clearing stuff, rather than dumping, into the earth, because that just wasn't resonating with me. So I think, if you're just getting started, it's really as simple as sitting in a chair, closing your eyes for a minute, taking a breath in and out, and envisioning roots growing from your feet down into the earth, and just start there.
I love that. It's so simple.
It is. It's all simple. I always say that, like, this work this work is so simple.
Right.
But it's the, it's the doing of it that is where, things get kind of interesting.
Yeah, it's the commitment to sit
Yeah.
and just doing it and letting ourselves not do anything else in that time. And the other thing that comes up for me when you talk about like allowing the roots to grow from your feet is that when we first started working together, I don't remember if you asked me about it or if I just had, you definitely, it was some conversation that you brought up, but you were like, are your feet flat on the floor when you sit? Have your feet flat on the floor. And I noticed that I never had my feet flat on the floor. I did not at all. Like I had my feet like this, like, kind of like perched up on the chair legs, or I'd have my legs up with me when I was sitting on the couch. Like never did I have my feet flat on the floor. And it's such a simple practice, but it's so profound.
It really is. And I'll be, if I'm doing a reading or, I'm working with somebody where I can't see them or I don't see their feet, I will oftentimes know if their feet are not flat on the ground, or if their legs are crossed, because that is also something in this work that shifts the energy in our body. And so it's that noticeable that, if I'm sitting there and because I'm always watching sort of what's going on energetically, that I notice it. And I'm like, and I'll say, like, in class, I'll be like, make sure your feet are flat on the floor. Like, I won't call people out, but I'm like, and then people are like, oh, she's talking to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to get back a little bit to your journey, because we started there, and I love how we roll and
I know.
we just kind of go wherever the energy is going. But I feel really called to talk about all the different types of careers that you had before you really stepped into saying, this is what I'm doing. This is actually what I've always been doing in some sense.
Yeah.
And this is who I'm here to be.
Yeah. So I started out undergraduate doing a degree in fine art. So it was painting and printmaking. And if I look at, my time there, the work was very emotive. It was very relationship driven. It was really about the human experience. So I find that kind of interesting. I think I was really digging around into what is this all about. But it didn't take me very long. I was out for like a year and a half of the undergraduate degree. I was showing. I had like a couple solo shows. I had some group shows. I had a show up in Toronto. So I was showing, and there was something there, but I was like, I don't know if this is what I really want my life to be. I don't know if I want to be an artist. So I started looking at what my options were, and I decided to go back to school to get my MBA, which I honestly, this is another moment where I have no idea where that came from, right? It was like, I was going to go get my MBA with a specialization in arts administration, which was not a common thing at the time. I always found it really disturbing that galleries would close because they didn't have the money. And I was like, well, why don't you just raise the money? Like, that was always my go-to. I was like, why don't you just Yeah. So I went and I took the GMATs. I didn't do so well in math, did exceptional in English, which, makes sense, I think, for me. And applied to a couple different universities for their MBA programs. One was an MPA, so it was a Master's of Public Administration. That was at, I think, American University in Washington, D.C. And then I applied to Binghamton, which was the only school that had an MBA with a specialization in arts administration. Everything else was MPA, MFA, and I really wanted the MBA. So I applied, and I got this call, and they wanted me to come in for an interview, but they couldn't do the interview on campus because there was a measles outbreak. So I had to meet in the Denny's. So I, was like, okay. So off I go to Binghamton, and I meet with the director in a Denny's, and he's having like eggs and coffee. So we sit and we have this lovely conversation, and I'm like, okay. And it was just like a conversation. There was no real questions or anything. And I left and I was thinking like, all right, I don't know what that was. And about, I think like 3 or 4 days later, I get a call, and it's the MBA Arts Admin program. And not only are they have they accepted me, but they are offering me a full tuition scholarship and the assistant to the director of the program, right,
What?
assistant to the director of the program, which was a paid position. So, right, I was like, oh yeah. So I did that. And then while I'm at that program, and there's a reason that I'm telling you these specific things,
Right.
while I'm at that program, I had a boyfriend in Toronto, and I decided that we had to do an internship at the end of our program. It was the last 6 months of the program. And so I decided that I was going to do it in Canada, because I wanted to be near him. And so what I did was we had to do an international business program. And I decided that I wasn't going to do the international business program. I was going to do an independent study that explored the difference between fundraising in the United States versus fundraising in Canada. And I did this whole, research project on it where I converted the dollars so that everything was equal, and you could see like how much was like, it was just this like, I don't even know, like, it's another thing. Like, I don't know how I did it. I remember finishing it, going to the teacher, handing it to him, and he said, "What grade do you think you deserve?" And I was like, an A+. And he was like, okay. And so that was a grade I got. So everybody's scrambling to get their internships. And I get a call from a graduate of the MBA Arts program who is a headhunter for development positions. And he says to me, hey, there's a position open at the McMichael Canadian Art Collection just outside Toronto. They're looking for a corporate person. They're building a corporate department, and they're looking for a corporate person. I think you would be great. Do you want to do that as your internship? And it's paid. I was like, sure, I'll do that. So, and like, if you're thinking like this sounds so easy, it really was easy. Like, I just rolled along. So I do the internship. While I'm there, he says, towards the end, I'm doing consulting work for the Manitoba Theatre Center. They're looking for a director of development. The job doesn't pay enough to get a seasoned professional, especially to move to Winnipeg, but I think you'd be great at it. Are you interested? Sure. I fly out to Winnipeg. I meet with the board. I come back like within a day. They offer me the position. I graduated as a director of development for the second largest theater company in Canada. Right?
Wow.
Right. So there's all these like moments in my life that were like this. And so I did 10 years of development work. I raised like over $30 million for nonprofits, which I loved. I was really good at it. And I think that I was really good at it because I connected so well with the donors. I understood what it was that they needed. I understood why they were giving. And in the end, it all felt good for everybody, right? It's like, because giving is not, it's not just about like giving. There has to be a reason to give. And so I developed these really beautiful relationships with people, and I really enjoyed doing it. I didn't like working with the boards, which is what really ultimately propelled me to leave fundraising, was that I didn't like the way that organizations like function. There was just, and the boards were always wonky, and they didn't understand their roles. And so it just was a lot. And of course, I think too, like that constant like sense of you're not where you belong. You don't belong here. This isn't what you're supposed to be. Like, it was like you don't, and I kept going and looking at other things, thinking it's the organization. And then finally I realized it's not the organization, it's the work, right? I'm supposed to do something else. So when I left fundraising, I jumped out of like an $82,000 a year job in 1999, and made $8,000 my first year, right? Like, right? And it was, I jumped without a plan. I just jumped because something said jump, and I did. And so, so there have been those moments. And then media has been the same way for me in a really interesting, way where, I I was 3 years old and I was in the Buffalo News on Easter wearing my Easter bonnet. When I graduated from the undergraduate program, I was in the New York Times in the Metro section because my friend had a Ernie on his cap. And I turned around to look, and Mario Cuomo was our commencement speaker. So when I turned around to look, they snapped a picture of the three of us. And so I was basically in the New York Times, that I was featured in the New York Times. Like, so there's always been this like up leveling of visibility. And this sort of like, I don't know, like, isn't it weird? Like, doesn't it like,
well, and I love it because it's easy.
Yeah. And don't you just want to know where it's all going? Like, I'm curious.
Excited, right?
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. That's awesome. So you also were a naturopathic doctor.
Oh, yes. So
like woman of many hats, and that's what I wanted to focus. I wanted to like kind of hear about like all of these different careers that you've had, basically.
Yeah.
Because and part of it is sometimes people are like, oh, I can't change. Like, that's too scary. It'll take too much time. I'm going to fail. And it's like, no, it's all adding up to something that you're not quite sure of what it is yet.
It does. And I'm so happy that I have all the tools in my basket from all of this, because it informs everything. And, the naturopathic, I went to the School of Natural Medicine, and I have a traditional naturopath's degree and a master herbalist degree and a master iridology degree, which is like analysis of the iris. I think, doing that program and immersing myself in natural medicine helped me to see the holistic scope of how everything is interconnected, and to really understand how we, like, how everything, like emotions and the physicality of the body, like how it all weaves in. And what was interesting was that as I started stepping into doing the clairvoyant work, I started seeing holistically, right? So I didn't need to do everything that I was trained to do. I didn't need to do iridology anymore to know what was going on, to be able to assess the body. Like, that information just morphed itself into the reading space. So, I'm able to, and this is where the work with animals kind of really excelled, because I was able to look at animals holistically using all of this knowledge and identify things that a lot of times the vets were missing. When there was like this sort of mystery of like, we don't know why this is happening, I was able to look and find the root of it, because I had all these different modalities that I had access to through my study. So eventually I did just kind of, morph away from doing that physical assessment work with people and just started doing it in the clairvoyant space because it was easier.
Well, and all the information is there.
It is.
As long as you're open to tuning in and accessing the information, and you're confident in not your ability, but spirit's ability to give it to you, right? Then it just comes through.
Yeah. Well, I think what I recognized, again, it was that it was the universality of things, right? So if I could see it in the iris, then I could see it as energy, like it existed in an energetic form. And I think I just am so interwoven with that philosophy that it isn't even really a question, right? It just is. It's factual to me.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about your app that you created, Awaken and Grow Flow, which is like its own multiverse.
Yeah, I've been calling it a spiritual cosmos, like it's, and it is. I mean, it's definitely a multiverse. I love it. Another thing that I was called to do, I started, this word or this phrase came to me, which was scalable intimacy,
Mm.
right? And it was, how do I take my work to many and retain the sense that the individual and a small group has when I'm working with them, because it's so powerful and it's so beautiful and it's such a good community and so much fun, like on both sides. I love it. People love it. It's just, it's good. So I had sort of, this came to me and it was rolling around, and then the app showed up as a possibility. And I was like, oh, that would be interesting. And so the app has a couple of purposes to it. One is that, right, the sort of ability to reach a lot of people in this same kind of intimate space. And then it also, I've been sort of plagued with this notion of barriers to accessibility, right? So that I do believe that money plays a part in our ability to get the information that we need to grow, and there's an important piece to that, because it's hard. So because money is the currency, it is the thing that either stops us or allows us to do something that we think that we want to do. And so it plays a huge role in, can we do it or can't we do it? Can we have it or can we not have it? Are we ready for it or are we not ready for it? So money, I think, is something that we should all understand as a messenger for us of where we're at and whether we're on track and what we're working on, because it does play that role. Mm-hmm. At the same time, I wanted people to be able to have access to a layer of this work, kind of like regardless of where they're at. I mean, I still have, there's a free component to it, which is really rich. And there's the daily messages, and, I do live challenges, and there's like all sorts of stuff going on in this app, like in the app. And then there's a monthly subscription, which has mini programs in it that you can really deep dive into stuff, which I really love. And it unlocks some meditations and other things that are part of this. But the thing is it's a really low subscription. It's $9.49. And it doesn't mean that these programs are less value, because if I was to teach these programs to a group, they would be like a $400, $600 program. They're not like throwaways. They're actual programs that you're getting for $9.49. And I still have people say to me like, oh, I can't afford that. And I'm like, okay, well then it's not for you. Right. And so that's what we need to understand, is that, money is something that we, that lets us know whether or not something is for us. Maybe not whether or not it's of value to us, but whether or not it is for us. Because you'll see it no matter what you do. It doesn't matter what you put the price at, right? There's going to be somebody who's like, I can't afford that. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Well, and I love, and I know you talked on a little bit about the havingness, whether people can have it or can't have it. And I know that that's something that you've taught on a little bit. Yes. In different programs. Yeah. And that's part of why I think the Awaken and Grow Flow app is beautiful, because people can kind of start doing that work if they're really committed to it, to unraveling, why do I feel like I can't have this if this is really something that I desire, so that they can step into a bigger space if that's something that they choose to do.
Yeah. But I just find that, like, again, I find the money thing so fascinating, because, from my own perspective of things that I've dealt with in my life, being resentful that somebody's charging X amount of dollars for something. Right now, I can look back at it and see like, well, that's my work to do. Right. It's not, like, good for them that they can value their work at that level. But we don't see it that way. We want to like blame somebody else for what we can't have. And like I said, that's my work to do, right? That's your work to do. That's an individual's work to do if they feel like they want something and it's not within reach. And a lot of times, like, one of my favorite expressions is the yes comes before the door opens, right?
Mm.
And it's true in so many different moments in time. We always have to do what's right for us, and it's not, I don't advocate people putting themselves into, really difficult positions. But stretching to do something, figuring out how to do it, how to make it work. I know, like the woman who headed up the School of Natural Medicine, she was a big proponent of, just do it and the money will come. I'm not as like, just do it and the money will come, but she was like that. And I remember doing that I did the Ann Wigmore Living Foods training program. It was like a 3-week long program, and I went to Puerto Rico to do that. And I that was my mentality when I did that. And looking back is like, I don't know, did that put me in a difficult position? It might have, but it was 20 years ago, and here I am today. Like, I'm okay.
You didn't die from it.
Maybe, maybe I was returning soda cans for like 5 months. I don't know what I did.
But you lived.
I did.
And so you have a really fun program that I want to talk about that's coming up. And I know that it's fun because I've done it and I still actually implement this work in my life. I am right now. And it's 40 days to creating more. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about that.
I think that on a universal scale, this is probably people's most favorite program that I teach. It is fun. It's I use a lot of different modalities in it. It's sort of a hodgepodge of things that I've learned over the years. All of my programs have a daily practice and then energy work weekly throughout the program. I actually just realized that. That I actually have a structure that I didn't realize that I wasn't acknowledging. So the daily practice is based in grounding and having a meditation space. And then also working with some mantras that help to both remove blocks and attract more for you. So when we say more can be many things, right? More does not necessarily, like, I think sometimes if we're in a lack mentality, we go to money, but more is not necessarily money. So just to, sort of put that out there for people to kind of think about. And then during the weekly classes, we do mindset work and energy work, play with some of my favorite tools that help us to create and manifest, talk about the process of creating and manifesting, what we're actually doing when we're creating and manifesting, because I think it's important to understand the process, because that helps us to lock it in rather than just kind of trying to make something happen. So, it's, we do some passion and purpose stuff, like, what is your passion and purpose, which actually helps to focus what you're creating for yourself. It's just, it's a very multi-layered, kind of rich, fun program to step into. I think it's fun to step into as an initial offering to, like, an introduction to working with me. So, if people are interested, they can find it at 40 Days to Creating More, and it's the number 40. So 40daystocreatingmore.com. And the program's $497, but I can give you, like, I think it takes $200 off, so it's $297, and it's I think it's Gratitude 108. But if you try that and it doesn't work, just message me and I'll get you a coupon code for it. So, and the app is you can get that at awakeninggrowflow.com. And you just go to it, you put in your phone number, and whatever your platform is, it'll send you the link to install it from whichever app store you have. But I hope that people will come and join me, because it's fun and rich work that really, it's life-changing. And the thing is that it's life-changing in a way that you're stepping into things that you just don't even know that there's more, right? It's
Right.
like, it's that, it's like that dream that you're having that dream where you're in your house, and all of a sudden you find like a whole new room that's so much bigger and full of so many things. And that's what, this work is like. We just keep opening new rooms for you to step into.
It's so fun. I do. I mean, I've taken many programs with you now, like since we started working together. I definitely was on a roll there for a couple of years solid.
Yeah.
And I would say like the 40 days to creating more it felt like a really beautiful culmination. Like you're touching on so many different pieces that maybe we didn't talk about in one program, or like that we had never talked about. And then other pieces that we had talked about that really were important and structurally, like foundationally important to the work.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I always say it's like, I also have a yoga certification. Like I'm also a yoga teacher. Of course, right? And I always say that, just like in yoga, you can learn the same thing over and over again, and you're always going to find something new, to like a deeper layer or level to go into. And that this work is like that. It's, you could do the same program over and over again, and you would hear things that you didn't hear the first time, or you would have an awareness of it that you didn't have the first time, because you've unlocked that next level, right? You've stepped into the next place of awareness that you couldn't see when you were here. Now that you're here, it's like, oh, I see that. And the great thing is there's like 1,000 more levels above you that you can step into.
This is the video game, by the way.
Right.
Because we are in the game.
We're in the game.
You just found your way out of the Matrix. Like that's what comes up for me is the movie The Matrix. And like you found your way out of the Matrix, and now you're like, come on, let's play.
I know. Well, it's like, I think I'm figuring out how to play in the Matrix, right? It's not leaving the Matrix, it's actually playing in the Matrix.
Right.
Which is kind of fun.
Yeah, definitely. And then showing other people how to do it too.
Yeah.
It's actually really fun and really easy. By the way, it's not really hard. It's not a big deal.
Can I this like sort of poked at me to share this. We're talking about, my backstory.
Yeah.
And like in another one of these moments, I must have been like, it was somewhere between like 7 and 10 years old. And I had a dream that wasn't really a dream. Like those were like sort of the vision-y things that I would have, but it was kind of a dream space. And I was raised Roman Catholic. So I walked into the church, and the church was empty, but I could feel that there was somebody there. So I went up onto the altar, which of course, like you don't do. So I went up onto the altar, and Jesus walked out from behind the vestibule. He walked out onto the altar, and he was like, "Hey, I'm so glad you came." And I was like, "Hi." And so we sat down on the little step up to the altar. We sat down there, and he had this whole conversation with me about how this isn't the way that it was supposed to be, and that this wasn't his intention, and that I had this role to play in sharing information, and it wasn't in this construct. And it wasn't like word for word, but that was like, I remember like leaving waking up from the dream and going like, oh, that was interesting. And I never told anybody about it, which is one thing. Like coming from a Roman Catholic family, I know, when Jesus touches you like that, you usually either end up as a nun or a priest, right? Right. So I never said anything. I didn't stay part of the church as like around 16 is when I kind of started having a problem with with the information, questioning the the way things were presented, it didn't feel right to me. And then years later, so this would have been about 2001, it was probably 2001, I was living upstate and I was meditating, and he popped in again and he was like, hey.
Hey, go ahead.
Right, I was like, oh, hello. And he was like, okay, so here's the thing. I did not share this information for people to turn it into a religion. I was trying to explain to people that we can live as spirit with a body. And when we live as spirit with a body, here's all the things that we're able to do. Here's the power that we have. And it kind of got lost. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense. So I just felt called to share that. It's not a story I've shared I don't know how much I've shared it. So.
I know that I've heard it from you, but again, we've worked together extensively, and
it might be in the book. I don't know. It could be in the book.
I think it is in the book, actually. Now that you say that, I feel like that's in the book, but it may get lost on people, who don't have the time to read and all of that. And it is a really important story. My whole body was lighting up as you were saying, which is always like a big yes, that was supposed to come through, right? Yeah. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you for the space to share it. So.
Because I think it is important that I know from my own, like, Jesus wasn't coming to say, idolize me and I'm the only one who can do this and all of this. It was, no, I'm trying to show you how to live in love, how to live in compassion, how to really take back your own power.
Right. Take back your own power, and the whole, like, the ability to instantaneously manifest and transmute time and space, and heal yourself and heal others. Like, all of that is the power of spirit with the body as a vehicle.
Yes.
That's where we get. That's what we get.
I love it. That's a beautiful way to end.
Isn't it?
It's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Christine, for sharing all of this with us. I'm so excited for everyone who is touched by this podcast, who listens to it, who shares it out. We really encourage you. If this touches you, please share it with people that you love. If you love this content and you want more, I encourage you to subscribe. You want to hear more about Christine's work, 40days to creatingmore.com with the coupon code gratitude108 for the program that begins. It's October 30th, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
2019. So I know we've got
yes, since this will live infinity. But you can always find Christine on the Awaken and Grow Flow app as well. And which is really an incredible tool. Thank you so much for creating it for everyone. It's such powerful work. And again, this is Celeste Hartwell with Divine Feminine Leaders Podcast. We are a podcast. We have a feminine view of entrepreneurship, and we are for women by women. So thank you so much, Christine.
Thanks, Celeste.
And thank you to all the listeners. We love you so much. Thank you so much for playing in this space with us. Mwah.